What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Paranormal Council, where we are going to be discussing about what they finally admitted about UAPs, pretty much disclosure and the government UAPs, and we will get into some things. So I'm looking forward to it. Um, so look, they admitted the question, right? They have not admitted the answer. The government now says UAPs are real, unidentified, and worth tracking. And it built offices and held hearings just to prove it's taken them seriously. But what they have not done is confirm anything non human. So, let's get into a little bit of some of this discussion. First of all, real quick, I want to clarify, guys, UAP versus UFO, right? A lot of people kind of wonder. A UFO was originally unidentified flying object. The term was popularized by the Air Force in the 1950s, around like the Project Blue Book era. But literally, like any flying object, witness, a sensor can identify. Over 70 years, it got culturally welded to alien spacecraft. Tabloids, there's a stigma when people say UFO, they immediately think alien spacecraft, right? So then they came out with UAP, originally unidentified aerial phenomenon, but then about 4 years ago they changed it to anomalous, so that way it can expand out the subject heading a little bit, right? So it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Um, so again, they're the same thing, guys. They're really the same thing. It's just that it's like what actually changed. Nothing's really changed other than they just changed the name, and the framing and the scope. That's all. That's it. Not the phenomenon itself. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Um, so we got a lot that we are going to talk about. And one of the things I would like all of us to maybe go around and kind of give our opinions on, and keep in mind, this may not be everybody's specialty. It's not mine. So I'm a ghost guy, but I love all the paranormal stuff. And so the first thing I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about is like real disclosure, or is this sort of a managed narrative, right? What do you guys think? You guys think that is this some real disclosure starting to happen, or is this a managed narrative?
Well, I'm not saying that it's aliens, but uh, every time the news starts talking about Jeffrey Epstein, they talk about aliens. So, managed narrative. Which narrative are they trying to manage?
Okay, that's a good point. Jen, Sean, any thoughts on it?
Well, I'll jump in. I think for me, I'm kind of halfway in between that, a yes and a no with this. I think it is managed. I think that they're trying to direct the narrative for a particular reason. I'm not really sure exactly all the reasons. Stacy alluded to one reason, but I also think that there's the possibility that we are actually using some of the technologies that we have, and we're kind of winking into the camera, going, "Yeah, this is UAP." Um, and so I think some of it is a narrative, but it's also kind of a telltale. I think you hit it on the head. They're posing a question, they're posing a narrative, but they're really not giving us any answers. And I'll leave it for there. We'll get into it a little bit later, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, with disclosure from the government, right? There, you get so much and that's it. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that they know about that they have not disclosed. There's probably a lot of science behind it that they have not disclosed. Probably a lot of technologies that, of course, most of us don't know about, which could account for some of the UAP sightings. It is a narrative of sorts. I mean, I every time I hear about this conversation, I look back to, the space race and getting to the moon, and the competition with Russia, and what was said and what wasn't said, and what was the narrative there. And this is kind of similar in a lot of ways. It's like, let me show you a little bit of what I got, and then let's see what you got, and then we'll figure it out from there, right? See who can get there first, who can master these advanced technologies faster, things like that. So I think it's good that they're having the conversation. I think it's good that it's kind of coming out more. I'm glad from like a community psychological stance that people are like, wait, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I was seeing these things. Maybe I'm everybody said I was crazy. Everybody said I was out there. Maybe I'm not as out there as everybody thought, right? So again, it's we're getting something, but we're not getting a whole lot.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what they sort of maybe admit a little bit and what they're kind of denying still. And so right now, they are saying that UAPs are real and officially logged. In fact, the Pentagon's ARROW office, which is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, from 2022 is when it came around. Actually has a caseload of over 2,000 incidences. And of course, roughly 1,000 sit in like an active archive. So that's interesting enough. But there's a lot of like very thin data. And also one thing I want to point out is what they deny. And this is kind of interesting because in March 24, they did a historical record report. And they were kind of reviewing everything since 1945. And ARROW found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology. And no evidence the U.S. or any contractor recovered or reverse engineered alien craft. Alleged secret programs per the Pentagon do not exist, are misidentified national security programs, or resolved to a disestablished program. But the politics of everything shifted anyways, and as of 2026, the administration is pushing a disclosure executive order. Secretary Hegseth said that the Pentagon will be in full compliance. Congress keeps the pressure on. House Oversight Representative Anna Paulina Luna transparency probe, the UAPs, in the UAP Transparency Act, which you can look up, HR 1187. You can also look up UAP provisions in the FY 2026 NDAA, the new Government Science Advisory Council. So there's a little bit of what they are admitting and what they're not admitting. Stacy, what's up?
The government said that the MK Ultra program from the late 60s and early 70s was shut down, and they weren't doing it anymore because it was, dangerous, and it was, illegal, performing experiments on Americans without their consent or knowledge. And then come to find out that MK Ultra program has been ongoing in different evolutionary forms nonstop up until the Trump administration. This Trump administration, even in the first one, they were running it. And a lot of the stuff that DARPA was involved with, Zuck has come out and said that, that the algorithms that they were running on Facebook to try and see what, they could do with kids in the algorithm was part of MK Ultra. And, that's come out, and they denied it all the way up until it came out in congressional hearings recently. So forgive me if I don't believe the government when it says that it doesn't have any captured UFO tech, because a lot of the tech that came out of Bell Labs, which is what's been rumored to say they were the ones that got the technology to try and reverse engineer it, that we enjoy today, including the IDE hard drive, is direct evolution out of Bell Labs from all of that. The wafering in which they created those platters for the hard drives was the exact same atomic plattering that you would see in the metal wreckage that they were pulling out in Roswell. You know, it was more like an aluminum foil, they said, but it would spring back to its original form. But they put that under a microscope, and they saw layering at the atomic level of different metals that we use now today, or did until quite recently, with hard drives. It was that same technology in order to put information on metal in order to run our computer systems. Lasers, I mean, that's famous. You know, the light amplification by stimulated emissions of radiation, which is what laser stands for, is literally popped out of Bell Labs, along with fiber optic, popped out of Bell Labs out of nowhere. There's no, evolution of discovery in any documentation of this technology. It existed, and then it didn't exist, or vice versa. It didn't exist, and now it exists. There's no, hey, we discovered this new thing, this new formula, this new mathematics. Let's try and build something. No. It just appeared. And, a lot of our technology outside semiconductors in computers has pretty much been a direct evolution of the technology that came out of Bell Labs and their reverse engineering.
I mean, they do say, like, a lot of people point out the fact that, like, our technology curve really started to shoot upwards shortly after what was it,
1947.
Roswell? Yeah, Roswell. And then all of a sudden, technology just started to really shoot up. But then you have your skeptics and stuff, which we'll get into a little bit of skeptic stuff here after a while. Andrea said that she hasn't researched much on it, but she said that she could be totally wrong, but she had a feeling that have always believed that aliens are for sure real, and we have even seen them, but they're not the little green men flying in the air, but they're in the ocean and hiding. So maybe a fan of the Abyss movie.
Well, that's where the Navy's the biggest spotter of all of these things, and they always pop out of the water when one of their ships goes by. The fighter jets and all the stuff that you're seeing in the news with the Tic Tac and all that's the Navy. It's not the Air Force or anything else. They're, aircraft carriers are going along. All of a sudden, the water starts to, get really glowy and bubbly, and something will pop out of the water right next to a giant battleship or right next to an aircraft carrier, and they don't care. Most of them just say, "Hey, did you see that?" Nah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, Andrew, you have never seen the movie Abyss, so you need to see it then. You need to see it then if you're a fan of water aliens. Spoiler alert. All right. So, all right. Anybody else want to throw their 2 cents in on any of that?
Well, I think for me, I look at it. I had some contacts with some security stuff going on in the past, and the retrieval program, actually, we can trace some things publicly to a group called Group 58 in Britain, and it was a NATO group connected to the 509th Bomber Group, and they were tasked with the quick response, kind of like a quick response team. They would get there through helicopter, whatever means, secure the location with whatever they had. I think those protocols came up after 1947. So, but the Group 58 was a NATO led, but all this hardware went to the United States that they got. Now we got the PJs, or the rescuers from the Air Force, but these guys go in when there's a wreckage and there's no one to rescue, they'll send these guys in to take care of the craft. Now that's kind of interesting. And said, like I said, for me, I think we have had some stuff in the past, and that's come down, whether it's Roswell or I think there's some like Rendlesham Forest and some of the other things going on there that they could publicly see that there was some crashes that doesn't make sense. Why would we send a high powered it's in Britain, crashes in Britain. Why do we need to worry about spies or anything like that getting the crash? So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I kind of want to move a little bit into some of the skeptical stuff as well, because I know we talk about this stuff. There's a lot of these UAPs going on, but yet we still don't seem to have actual alien type stuff. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think are. What do you think might be some of the like from a skeptical perspective? Like, do you think there's sensor type things? Is it like reflections? Is this like spirit orbs for paranormal? I mean,
Well, Werner von Braun, one of the founders of NASA, the inventor of the U-2, or not the U-2, the V-2 rocket from Nazi Germany, where they were bombing London with rockets. That guy, former Nazi, founded NASA, and before his death, he dictated a whole bunch of things personally, as in a memoir, to his personal secretary, and off the record,
he came over from through Operation Paperclip, right?
Correct.
From like
with a whole bunch of scientists. This Operation Paperclip was really the origin of the Cold War, because suddenly German Nazis had to justify their existence in the land of the free and not go to Nuremberg. And they had to do this by showing that they actually had real intelligence against the Soviet Union. And they would work with U.S. military and U.S. intelligence. Essentially, the CIA was the invention of these former Nazis. Before that, it was the OSI. The Nazis came in and they renamed it the Central Intelligence Agency to combat the Soviet Union. So both the CIA and NASA are literally the brainchild of former Nazis. Aside from all that, Werner von Braun, in his deathbed confessions, essentially, he told his secretary that one of the invasions that's going to take place right before World War III is going to be an alien invasion. But don't believe it. It's fake. They have all the technology already to fake an alien invasion, and they're going to do that to try and create a one world order. This is back in 1978. And he said the name of the project is Project Bluebeam. And it's a real thing that they can fake. They have all the technology already, whether it be the actual craft or holographic technology, to make it look like there's an alien invasion taking place. And he said, don't get caught up in it. Don't believe it. It's not real. It's a psyop. And then, she wrote that down, and he turned around and dropped dead. So it wasn't even like it could be verified after the fact. But that's been, known from her, and she's still alive, that, Project Bluebeam is a psyop from the United States government to basically create this one world government and bring everyone to heel, through fear. And for all intents and purposes, I would not shock me at all, because they did it for COVID. Everybody was locked down for 2 years because of the sniffles. All these things that were going on, they told us we had to surrender our freedom to stay safe. We had to shut down our businesses to stay safe, pull children out of school, and then take an experimental drug to, give you myocarditis. I don't know. It's just as plausible, if not more plausible, to say that that's what's going on as opposed to aliens are real. Either one has just as much validity.
Yeah, I just think with there's so much stuff that's going on out there, but yet we still just can't seem to cross that threshold of evidence. There's like the government, again, like we said earlier, they're admitting that there's something going on, that these phenomenon's real, but they're not exactly saying that it's alien or whatever. They're investigating. So, and again, that's why it's anomalous. It doesn't necessarily mean alien, so to speak. It's just they're trying to stay away from those type of framing. That's why they changed it from UFO to UAP. So
when I was a kid, there was eyewitnesses in my family that Santa Claus came down the chimney and put Christmas presents under the tree. And I had physical evidence that it took place because there were 2 cookies that were bitten out of and the milk was drank. So it's got to be. That's the way it is.
I mean, everybody knows
Santa. The government is providing us right now. They're providing us with the cookies and the eyewitness accounts that Santa Claus is real.
Santa Claus is real.
Well,
okay, so I still believe in Santa. Shut up. All right, so, all right. So, what about this? Do we think that? Like, what about the possibility of like camera gimbals, lens flares, errors, and plus there's a lot of traffic nowadays, right? There's a lot of traffic in the air, drones, Starlink trains. I mean, Chinese spy balloons. What do you guys think?
I'll throw 2 things in real quick. The first thing is we have reports right now of humans within 10 to 20,000 feet at airports flying in the air with some type of technology, and they're not talking about that. So there's some private stuff going on out here that we have people that's able to take suits like the Tony Stark suit going up in the sky. So I think that's kind of cool. The second thing is, as far as the evidence goes, I think some of it is deliberately put out there to kind of make it look silly. There's the last bunch that they put out actually has 2 balloons in it that they're saying is anomalous. But I think that I think the first set had a balloon or 2 in it too. So they're deliberately putting things out there that looks silly, because you can take these balloons that they find in Middle East for these birthday parties, and they can put the shadows of those balloons, those pictures of the silhouettes of those balloons, in the exact cutouts of these, what they're posting on these disclosure things. But then the orbs and stuff like that, I think that they're hitting around at some things with our technology. But then I think there's probably some things they're throwing in there that's true. But I'll just kind of leave it there for right now. So
I think it's interesting that this UAP concept definitely belongs in the paranormal, right? Because it's anomalous. It's not provable. It's there's not enough evidence for it, right? Just like everything else that we're looking at in the paranormal, but everybody's looking for answers. It's also interesting to me that a lot of the documentation that they're putting out and a lot of the stories behind it also go hand in hand with what we see in the paranormal with orbs, right? And what happens is when you oversaturate the conversation with too many of them, is people go, oh, yeah, whatever. Or, oh, look, it's just a balloon. Or, oh, look, it's just dust. Or, oh, look, there was a fly, Or, oh, it might have had wings. Maybe it didn't have wings. Well, now that same conversation that applied to dust orbs is now happening with supposedly UAPs, right? And so what it's doing is it's setting in this conversation where, and when enough of it happens, nobody's going to be looking at the evidence anymore. They're going to be looking somewhere else for something bigger, grander. They're going to get tired of the conversation, right? So step 2 is in place already. We're moving the conversation elsewhere. I think
Absolutely.
that's interesting. And I also think too, Stacy was talking about it, you know, with this massive jump in technology, right? You can't help but notice when we're talking about like hard drives, right? How that's written, that the stone tape theory is very much the same, just in a different aspect, all within the paranormal community. And you have to wonder, if you start connecting the dots between all of those things, what do we find? Right? What's the similar thing there? Has this been here this whole time? Have we always kind of known about it, but not known about it? Do we know more now than we think we do? So, I don't know, just some questions.
If you follow the ancient alien theory, the mythology of Prometheus bringing technology to humanity is what got him basically condemned to have his liver eaten every night and regenerate from, punished from Zeus. Mankind didn't know how to create fire. All of our technology that we have, everything that we do involves fire. We seem to not be able to do anything technology wise without setting something on fire. I mean, even the most scientific stuff that we've got, nuclear reactors, is basically a giant crock pot. We get the rods, the uranium rods, hot enough, put them in water, they boil the water, and we use the steam to turn turbines. If we can't set it on fire, it's not worth it. And we're now starting to explore other technologies and metamaterials that don't require us to set it on fire in order to, use that energy. New stuff with supercapacitors. They just came out with what's known as a quantum battery, which is, iffy technology as far as I'm concerned, because it only works for, 1/1 millionth of a second, but it actually takes the charge out of thin air and uses that to, store energy, and then it releases it just as quickly. And it's basically using what they used to do in Stargate Atlantis, the ZPMs that they had, and I don't know whether you watched that show, Josh, but they literally pulled energy out of space vacuum, and that 0 point between space and the next level, this is the go between our space and the next dimension is full of energy, and that's the theory. If you can extract that from 0 point, you have basically unlimited amount of energy, and they're now developing what's known as quantum batteries, and it's about the size of a postage stamp right now, but it's a real technology that they discovered and they plan on utilizing within the next 5 years, putting it in your cell phone where it has unlimited power always.
Yeah, Energizer's going to be pissed.
Lithium, we're running out of lithium because we're just creating all these batteries, and lithium itself it's not rare. It's not a rare earth, but to extract it is incredibly, it pollutes everything when you try and pull it out of the earth. And the place that's willing to do it right now is China and like India and these third world countries. And we're running out. They're running out. So
I would also want to throw out there. So we kind of like are talking a little bit about some things, and Jen was kind of mentioning paranormal type takes and stuff. So if it's not human, right? I mean, what exactly do we think these could be? Is it extraterrestrial though? Is it interdimensional? We're talking like nuts and bolts type stuff, or again, is it something that maybe even is paranormal? Like, I know that there was a lot. Let me just put it like this: when I was young, it was always aliens, right? It was UFOs and it was aliens, little green men or Martians, Martians attack, whatever, right? All that stuff, War of the Worlds. It was always aliens. And then I never ever entertained the idea of angels or demons, um, that type of thing until later on as an adult when I started getting into paranormal research. And then somebody brought it up one time. They're like, what if a lot of the stuff we're seeing is actually angels and stuff too? Because there was some things in the Bible that in the Old Testament that could almost sound spacecraft like. So are we seeing those? So what is some of your guys' take on what we may be seeing? Is what they are? Are they paranormal, alien, interdimensional, a little bit of both? Maybe we have multiple things.
It's not really my take on it, but there's a whole diverse group in the cryptids research department. And many of them believe that at least Bigfoot, if not others, are interdimensional beings and or alien. And what's the difference between those two, right? And so the question too is does that have something to do with it? There's this uptick in sightings of UAPs. Well, now there's a lot more sightings of Bigfoot or other cryptids, but is that just because there's more people looking, or because we have bigger social media platforms, or is it because there's way more debunkable evidence now than there used to be? Who knows, right? But maybe that's an option too. Maybe it is angels, maybe it is demons, maybe it is combination, or maybe it's just Bigfoot going home like ET.
I will say one thing real quick. I think Sean wants to say something, but I will jump in with just one thing. Is like, I'm a little disappointed though, because it used to be every time I saw alien sightings and we got pictures, man, there's some cool looking stuff. Man, these cool looking metal nuts and bolts type shit, man, lights and just cool. Now they all look like orbs or tic tacs or whatever. It's like it's almost like why is it like, is it a phase or something? Is it like now all of a sudden everybody's hopping on board or something? But I miss the old UFO videos and photos, man. Those are some cool ones, anyways.
Yeah, on that topic, it's kind of interesting as you watch through the years from the 40s on up to now, the changing of technology in our present world also changes the pictures of the UFOs. We're now going back into more of a kind of a medium psychic kind of idea of UFOs, because that's where the genre fads are going right now, in my opinion. But I think that there is real nuts and bolts UFOs and stuff like that. I do believe in God has the ability to create other beings and other planets, so I'm not against that. And it always irritates me, just kind of a side note here, you got these new agers and all these UFO people, well, it's going to destroy Christianity if they find an alien. Have you read the Bible? No, it won't. I mean, we've been talking this for years, thousands of years. So, but kind of like what you said about the angels and demons, yeah, I think it's possible. I also think it's possible for other beings to be out there and coming through, extra dimensional, absolutely. There's also something else. If you really go back and study the true history of the paranormal and do some seek time in the research in the background, almost always in the early days of true UFOlogy and the paranormal, they were actually linked to people seeing the dead when they saw the UFO, or seeing fairy, or seeing some kind of the Bigfoot trend. I know that there's a lot of scholar research done in that area talking about the history of that. So I just think it's interesting to kind of think about the paranormal has kind of been linked. And problem, we talked about it, I think, last week with our Bigfoot show, or a couple of weeks ago, the fact that you have UFO group over here, paranormal group right here, Bigfoot, Dogman groups over there, and ghost hunting over here, when it's really all kind of the same thing, but they don't want to get out of their lane, or they don't want to, they'll poo poo the other lanes. And it's like, if we would come together and figure it out, there's a lot more to this than just a physical ape called Bigfoot, or a physical plant, traveling vehicle called a UFO. There's probably something that we just are missing here. So what y'all's thoughts?
Well, I think one, we are going to get into some
personally,
more. I was just going to say, we are going to get into some more of that, like some tie-in stuff that I really want to get into for next week's episode, when we talk about Skinwalker Ranch. I think there's some definite discussion about portal stuff. So I really want to hit more of that when we get into that, for sure. But I also wanted to throw this out real quick too. I know Stacey's about to say something too, but I wanted to throw this out too. Is like, this is kind of a little bit of a thought, right? So Sean, when you mentioned like God is, capable of creating other beings and things like that, other planets, I wonder how that would work. This is, again, my in-depth, just sitting around a campfire talking deep thoughts. I wonder how that would work. Like, if he created, say our God created another planet and alien beings, would he have done something similar? Like, would they have a different covenant? Would he have sent like Jesus Christ, or a version of their Jesus Christ there for their covenant, for their sins? I wonder how that would work. Like, would we learn that type of story if we ever met aliens, to be like, yeah, like, we believe in God. We had this guy, this alien, that came, and he was the son of God, and we gave him up and we crucified him, and I don't know, it'd be pretty wild. So
yeah, we've had a lot of discussions on that, theological and doctrinal discussions on that, and I think that's where some of the Christian community are on three different sides on that. I kind of stand on it that God has a plan for each and every situation and every planet. I'm just going to leave that plan to Him. So,
right.
But yeah, it's an interesting question and thought. But I kind of look at it. I'm going to do this real quick. If we had the opportunity to go from here to the edge of our universe, He's still God, and we still have an enemy called Satan. He can still reach that far. Things don't change because we go off planet. And there's a reason I'm saying that, because there's going to be discussions later on, and people I've actually dealt with that have this issue of being off planet. And so just a teaser with that, because there's a lot to that question, Mr. Josh. So
nice. I like it. We may have to dive into that too a little bit at some point. So, Stacey, I'm sorry, you were getting ready to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say that, personally, I believe they're interdimensional and time travelers, because that's kind of the same thing.
Sure.
You have to punch through dimensions in order to jump through time. That being said, being able to talk with the dead or see the dead, and also see UFOs and aliens, kind of is in the same realm as well. It's on that same wavelength. Our eyeballs only see 0.00137 percent of the light spectrum, meaning 99.99963% of the universe in the light spectrum is completely blind to us with our physical eyes. Animals can see, different parts of it. Some of them can see more of it. Bees, for instance, can see both ultraviolet and infrared. They have more cones in their eyeballs than we. Only have 3 cones in our eyeballs, and they have, I think it's like 200. Some women, genetically speaking, actually have 4 cones, and they can actually see more brilliant colors than the average person can. And then you have a lot of men who are actually colorblind. They have 2 cones, and they can only see a few colors, if any. That being said, there's a lot inside the spectrum of our what we consider to be reality that is just out of touch and out of reach from our visual cortex. Doesn't mean that it can't be transmitted into our brain in other ways, because our brain itself is a quantum computer. It can actually receive information that is not limited to what you can taste, touch, smell, and see. It's literally a whole thing unto itself. There was an AI experiment where they were doing genetic testing for all these different kinds of viruses. I'm not talking Fauci. I'm talking actual MIT, where they wanted to see the evolution of a particular virus so they could actually develop a vaccine for that virus's evolution. Well, they decided to put in the human genome to see what humans would look like when they start to evolve. And they turned the clock forward, had AI use the human genome to predict what evolutionary changes would take place in the human body over, hundreds and thousands of years. They moved the clock, 50,000 years, and we started to look like really fat gorillas. Our arms got longer, our bellies got bigger, our legs got shorter. And at 500,000 years, 500,000 years, the human body actually looked a lot like E.T. from the movie. Our necks got long, our arms got long, our legs got short, and we got really fat in the middle. And the head itself started to go flat and long, basically literally like E.T. And that was something the computer literally just one iteration after another just went, and churned it out and produced these different images of what evolution and the human body would actually start to look like 500,000 years from now. Now, that being said, the aliens that we're seeing don't look that much different than that. What if, by chance, what we're being visited to is us? We're from the future. Our evolutionary biology is so different from what we are now. They're actually coming back to actually try and find the source code back when we were more pure genetically. Who knows what the actual agenda is? But if you had the technology to go back, 2,000 years, would you? You wouldn't be able to talk to anybody. No one would understand you. You wouldn't understand anyone unless you can speak Aramaic. No one would be able to communicate with you on any particular level. And they would all look at you as either you were an angel, a demon, or a god, because you were just that weird.
Well, I was thinking, like, you did bring up a little point. I want to piggyback off that, Stacy. And I think, we've been seeing a lot of these UAPs that look like orbs, right? Energy type orbs.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is possible that the future technology, of course, we use a lot of energy that can shapeshift or, solidify, unsolidify. I'm sure there's some physics out there that is very advanced, but maybe these are like the futuristic drones. So it's possible that, yes, maybe you're right. It could be either us in the future, droning back, sending our little light energy drones, and popping into interdimensionally or back, traveling back, and they are trying to observe and like recapture, like, oh my god, this was what it was like thousands of years ago, and whatever, and they're trying to get all the information they can. I mean, who knows? Or the other hand is, it could be some type of alien race that is sending a lot of these probes, and these aren't the traditional nuts and bolts aircraft type of UFO, but these are these energy drones, these probes that are popping in through these portals, these dimensions, and they're just checking things out and using things. That's why they can kind of phase in and out and all this other stuff. So just wanted to throw that out there.
You're
Well,
not technically wrong.
I want to jump in on that. I'm sorry, Stacey. I wanted to just jump in on that one because we know that CERN is the Hadron, I can't say that word, collider there in Switzerland. They have admitted that they're sending, like, whatever type of energy they're sending into this area, they're calling it another dimension. They're saying that they send in 100%, but they get 110% back. And so my thought has always been, are we seeing some of that, these lights in the sky and these probes coming out? Are we seeing a future or even something that's happening right now on a planet? Maybe it don't have to be from the future. Maybe it can just be from the other side of the world, but they're able to come into this atmosphere. I know that there was a idea of something that our team had to deal with at some point was, what some people call kind of like astral projection, but something a little bit deeper than that. It's called shadow walking, where they can walk in the midst of the fabric of reality. And could it be something like that? And we're just seeing things pop in and pop out.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely think that there's a lot of possibilities. It's really hard to say. It's just weird to see, and I brought this up earlier, and I'm just kind of circling back to it again because it is odd to see that these phases that we go through, like when you go back to all the UFO sightings, back in the day, they were always saucer style, or there was some lights style, like the triangular lights and certain formation lights that seem to be there, but we didn't seem to have these like light orb styles, like almost like. So I just wonder if this is like a modern, or if this is what we're actually discovering now, and the stuff in the past might have been more of, how do you say, like more fictional, I guess you'd say, more fictional sightings. And then maybe these now are, with our technology now, we're actually starting to see what some of this stuff is maybe looking like, or are we getting an artificial feedback from all this technology, or this modern technology?
Yeah, I think it was interesting what, everybody's kind of
AI.
hitting on it tonight, like with the energy, right? And these trends. We're talking about the psychic medium trend. We're talking about these sightings trends with the UAPs and these orbs, and them all being interdimensional potentially, right? Because when we talk about psychics and mediums, a lot of times they're able to access another dimension of information, right? Shadow walking, remote viewing, astral projection, all these things are accessing another level of information through another dimension, so to speak. And so I think, yeah, I mean, the uptick in all of it is either people are just becoming aware and their perceptions changed, or there's more activity in both realms, right? It could be a combination of both, actually. I don't know. I think it's interesting because it is literally, like Sean was talking about, if we all got together and talked about these things, we might have a lot more information. Kind of like when we talk about like residential cases, and like, if the clergy and the clinicians and the doctors, the medical staff, the psychologists and the neuroscientists, and even, biologists and all these things, if we all got together and had conversations, we probably know a lot more than we think we do. We just don't know it yet.
Yeah, we got to, not compartmentalize everything. And we even have a bad habit of doing that in the paranormal world. We tend to hoard information. Like, we'll talk about things, but we don't seem to share a lot. Or everybody thinks that they are like on the leading edge of something different or unique. And I don't know, it does get a little bit like that. Versus if we did spend more time, Jen, I agree. If we all sort of spent more time sharing notes and participating in some exercises together, then we probably could make some more advancements than what we have for sure. I think that's definitely a thing. But I do want to take a quick moment just to say thank you to everybody that's been popping in chat tonight. It's always good to see all of you. A lot of our regulars are here. But again, I just love seeing everybody come in here. Remember, this is the show that you can interact with. We do try to read some questions or some comments every once in a while. Andrew brought up skinwalkers as well. And of course, Melissa is talking about Skinwalker Ranch as well. So guys, next week though, you're not going to want to miss it. We are going to be talking about Skinwalker Ranch, hotspot or hoax, right? So this is going to definitely, it's going to revolve around some of the same discussion, but there's a lot of other areas we can go talk about with Skinwalker Ranch. So I'm pretty excited to talk about that as well. We've got some Native American lore to discuss in there. We've got portals. We've got a lot of scientific stuff we can talk about. It's going to be interesting. So I'm excited for this one for next week as well. I always love all of our shows, so it's great. I love all of our discussions. So I do want to start to, as we wind down for this last, I think like 7 minutes or so. Again, let's kind of keep the discussion going. I do want to say that, you can kind of look at our history as humans as records. I don't think when we were putting images on walls, when we were starting to chisel stuff into cuneiforms and things, we were taking notes. I don't think we were stupid. I mean, we did some amazing things in our past as human beings. We do continue to do amazing things, but there's things we can't even recreate nowadays, even with modern tools. We did some pretty cool stuff thousands of years ago as well, and I don't think we were just making a bunch of stuff up. We were documenting a lot of things, and it spreads among cultures. Now, you can sit there and say, we had this discussion before, but you can say, like, a lot of the hybrid creatures that you see spread out, were they in fact aliens? Right? Because there is some depictions of what seems to be spacecraft and things like that. So really, like, how far back has we've been discussing aliens as human beings, and that possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just kind of start real quick. I mean, I've been kind of watching a lot of the Arizona, Utah, and some of those areas, and really kind of zoning in on the drawings on the walls and stuff. It's just really interesting. A lot of Native American folklore dealing with things coming out of the sky and stuff like that. And earlier he talked about the Bible issue. There's a biblical issue, like with Ezekiel. Some people, the ancient aliens, want to try to use that, but that actually goes back further into, besides the Jewish and Hebrew ideas. It was actually coming from other depictions of people carrying a throne. It's kind of what they're talking about there, is carrying a throne. But some people want to talk about it kind of being like a spacecraft. But I really think it's interesting to kind of go back and look at some of the other religions of the world, the Vedic belief systems as well, going back and looking at the Ramanas and what they were talking about, those ships. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, not just in Christianity, but a lot of different cultures dealing with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, and even if they started a different religion, a lot of them were documenting stories and things that were happening at that time. So even if you don't want to look at, because some people get very narrow-minded, but even if you just look at things as documentation, it's pretty awesome how there's some similarities during those times with civilizations that supposedly weren't even in contact or able to contact each other back in the day. So that's pretty cool. Anybody else? Thoughts? It's like all of a sudden.
Think about those. I can't remember the country, but those big, like in the middle of a desert somewhere, they have these like insects, huge drawings of these insects. I mean, who was looking at that? I mean, you'd have to be way up in the air, and they supposedly didn't have technology to see up in the air. I mean, what's
Nazca.
this thing? Yeah, there you go. So I mean, well, what was that about? You know,
Was that South America?
Yeah, it's in Bolivia.
Right.
They, basically created these huge drawings that were symmetrically perfect without having any kind of way of viewing them all at once themselves. Because at sea level, you can't see it, but you get up, 50 feet or 100 feet, and you can see the whole thing. And mathematically speaking, they're all symmetrically perfect drawings. I mean, people have a hard time drawing, pictures that are symmetric on a piece of paper that's right in front of them, much less do it with pebbles and stones that they're, putting together that have the same color, the same shape. They've collected and they plant these things out. It's incredibly difficult in order to do those things. And it's not very far from Machu Picchu, which is also in Bolivia too. Dating back, civilization, these stones go back a lot older than the Stonehenge, a lot older than the pyramids, and they're in shapes that look more like pillowed rocks than they do cut rocks, meaning that somewhere along the way, these rocks were squishy like concrete and suddenly became hardened real stone. And they have no idea how they interlocked and how they actually got them to make these shapes. Some theorize it was with sound. They used bells and things of that kind to hit a particular tone, a particular frequency, and made stone not only levitate but also become less solid, where it was moldable, just by making tones with regular instruments. That was Tesla's theory anyway. That's what he believed.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of traveled around, talked about UAPs, we're going to start to wrap everything up, guys. If you're just joining us, remember, watch the replay and catch us. Remember, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. But we will be back next week with Skinwalker Ranch, Hotspot or Hoax. So this is going to be, you don't want to miss that one. But also it's been a great discussion. Thank you all. Remember, and I just want to say again, you guys that have been watching, we've had some great numbers with the show. Keep sharing, keep liking. As I say, haunt that like button, and share that out to people. And, but guys, it's been a great thing. We will see you guys next week. And remember, if you experience a UAP, drink lots of cranberry juice. All right, guys, we will see you next week.
Peace.
see ya.